I, Douglas Ducote, an American patriot by the grace of God, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies foreign and especially domestic.
Hello everyone, this is producer Dustin Gold. I see you all in the chat. Thank you for joining us. Doug is off tonight, but he wanted me to give you a couple of quick updates. He put out a video late last night. We emailed that out to everyone as well on what's going on in Virginia. He's following that situation closely. There's some contradictory information that's been coming out from there in regards to the new Virginia General Assembly weapons ban, whether or not that just applies to inside the Capitol building and the legislative building or on the actual Capitol Mall grounds. Doug is following all of that. He will be talking to some more law enforcement and Republican politicians on Monday, and he will report back as he has the facts. He's also working on a couple of other stories as well, and he is still heading to Virginia middle of next week to go do some interviews with law enforcement and some elected officials before the actual rally and lobby day on January 20th. He will be live streaming from that event. I will not be there. I will be in the studio. He will, hopefully, as long as they don't block any cell signals, be beaming the signal back to the studio, and we'll put a nice professional broadcast together for you, for everyone who cannot attend that event. Now, what we're going to show you tonight is based on the footage we shot a few weeks back when we went on our trip from Boca Chica, Texas to McAllen, Texas, and up to Brooks County, Texas, which is about 75 miles above that area. This is an interview with Chris Cabrera. He's the Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council, which is the largest Border Patrol union. They endorsed President Trump. It was the first time they ever endorsed a presidential candidate. We got to sit down with him for about an hour. You've seen him featured in some of the cut-up mini documentaries that we put together, Border War Parts 1 through 3. We call this series Border War Unfiltered, where you get to see the full uncut interviews because you guys funded this with your donations. We are going to be releasing a 90-minute documentary right after Doug goes to Virginia, which will include all of the border interviews that we've done on the show over the last few months, as well as the footage we shot down there. And then we will be doing a fundraiser drive. It's fundly.com/OBC, so we can get some additional funds because we're going to be going back down to the border. We're actually talking with Border Patrol now about doing ride-alongs in the helicopters, boats on the Rio Grande, walking the trails, as well as in trucks. So we're putting that together for the next leg of this border investigation. Now, one of the things you'll see Chris Cabrera, we're not funded by Terrablock. We do not get paid by Terrablock. We are not getting commissions from Terrablock. Terrablock was a engineering solution that was presented to us through the show. We took a look at all of the specs. YouTube just crashed. Hold on a second. Okay, so I don't know if YouTube just crashed, but we talked to one of the owners of the company, and we like the solution. It's a rapid deploy modular system that this company, HESCO, who manufactures Terrablock, is telling us that for $1 billion, that's it, $1 billion, and President Trump just secured $3.5 billion through a court order that he can take out of the Department of Defense. They can install the Terrablock modular system for under $1 billion across the 1,350 miles that have no barrier today, and they could do this in 6 months. It could be done before the election in cooperation with the Army Corps of Engineers installing it. So that's what we're pushing for, coupled with PID, Perimeter Intrusion Detection Technology. The Terrablock has the ability to run a fiber optic cable through the modular system, and that would provide a vibration smart technology so that Border Patrol and or National Guard and or military at the border would be able to detect if people are trying to tunnel it and climb it. I'm going to show you a quick video of Terrablock just for those of you who haven't seen it. It's a minute long, so just hang with us, and then I'm going to come back. We'll go to Chris Cabrera, and he will also speak on our solution that Doug has been pushing, which is National Guard on the border. There's a few different ways that President Trump can do this. The way that actually, from my end, I've done all the research, the Insurrection Act, which President Trump has addressed before, would actually allow him, and this was signed in 1807 by Thomas Jefferson, it would actually allow him to give the military and National Guard down at the border full arrest powers, because if he just deploys them as National Guard, they can go there armed under his command, but they don't have arrest powers. The Insurrection Act would allow full arrest powers, and Insurrection Act in this case would overrule Posse Comitatus, which is the act that blocks the military from doing some policing on U.S. soil. But Insurrection Act can get around that, and we'll get into that further. But let me just show you the Terrablock solution, and then you're going to hear Chris Cabrera talking about it in a half-hour interview with Doug, uncut, so you can see the whole thing. Again, you guys funded it, and you have a right to see everything that we filmed. Okay, folks, Michael Farrington, thank you very much for the Super Chat. We appreciate it. All of the donations you guys send either through Super Chats or through any of our donation links, they're in the description. You can also go to douglasducote.com/donate, or if you want to donate specifically to the border investigation, it's fundly.com/OBC. Or you can text BORDER to 53445, and then that'll send the text back. You could donate through there. We're also doing alerts on border and immigration-related issues. Again, this interview is with Chris Cabrera. He's the Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council, the largest Border Patrol union. And as I said, Doug will be back probably tomorrow with a video. He's doing a lot of research on what's going on in Virginia, trying to bring you guys the facts. And he's got a couple of other stories he's working on as well as prepping to take off next week to get to Virginia so that he can do some interviews before the actual event on the 20th. And again, if all goes well and there's no cell blocking there, he will be streaming his signal back to the control room here, and we'll put a nice production together for you guys so that you can see everything going on the ground there in Virginia. Let's jump right into this interview with Chris Cabrera, the Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council.
Hello, American Patriots. Douglas Ducote here. I am in Brownsville, Texas, back down on the border again. I have with me the pleasure of meeting and introducing to you the Vice President of National Border Patrol Council 3307, Chris Cabrera. Chris, thank you so much for joining us, brother.
No, and thank you for coming out, and we appreciate it. It's folks like you that give us a voice, because if we didn't have the media involved, we would just be yesterday's news and the backstory, looking for someone to give us that attention so that we could get the help.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that for me as prior law enforcement, as well as a veteran U.S. military, I see you guys had the focus on you for a while, and then the focus turned very negative by certain members of the Democrat Party up in Washington, D.C. And then there's nothing anymore. You never hear it mentioned at all. We have the impeachment hearing going on, 24/7 news on that. But yet, here on the border, nothing's changed. You still have the drug mules, you still have the illegal people coming across, you still have the sex trafficking, human trafficking. Without the spotlight on the situation, do they see it on the other side?
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And expand on it?
Yeah, most definitely. Anytime anything goes on in the U.S., especially politically, it has ebb and flow characteristics here on our side. For instance, when the presidential race was going on way back when, before Obama got in, nobody knew what was going to happen, so we were having mass rushes at the border. And then when the last election came, it was super busy coming up, and then once Trump got elected, it just stopped. I mean, it was like just nothing. And then little by little, they figured out that nothing had actually been put in place. And now they have the migrant protection program, so now people are somewhat weary of coming in because they know they're getting sent back immediately. So we still have some that are coming in, but we're seeing a lot more of people that are trying to get away, and a lot of drug trafficking. The interesting part is those folks have always been there. We weren't able to concentrate on that. We went months without drug apprehensions, not because they weren't coming. It's we weren't there. We had, and in a 53-mile stretch of river, we had 3 people in the field. And now in that same stretch, we have 30 or 40 people in the field per shift. So it works out better, but it tells you that we're only 50% effective on our best day. So there's so much more that's needed, and unfortunately, we're getting caught up in this Democrat-Republican political football, and nobody's actually solving any problems.
We have this.
Okay, I'm just going to pop in for a quick second because I see a lot of questions, and at the end, if you want to ask questions about Terrablock, I'll explain that stuff to you, so hold those questions for the end. I've read all the spec sheets, all the engineering sheets, so I've got a pretty good, solid handle on the system itself, and there's 6 or 7 different versions of this. Right now, the latest intel we got from our source is that the plan was put on President Trump's desk about a month ago. Supposedly now, the contractor Provingo, who's actually the government contractor representative of HESCO, the manufacturer of Terrablock, is talking with Department of Homeland Security and other agencies, and they're going to begin to run an engineering test, hopefully, is the last bit of intel that we got. So that's a positive, that it's moving in that direction. And just so you know, our contact said on the last show, the point person in the White House is Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law. It wouldn't have been my pick, but he's in charge of the border marketing now and in charge of border. So if you call the White House switchboard, and we've looked for Jared Kushner's direct office line, and we cannot find it. So if you call the White House switchboard, say you want to leave a message for Jared Kushner's office, he is the director of innovation, is his title right now, also known as the Secretary of Everything. So that's who you want to contact. But I want to address something quick that Chris brought up because it isn't clarified in the video. I didn't see that when I was editing it. He said things have slowed down because of the Migrant Protection Act, which is the Migrant Protection Protocol. Just so you guys know what this is from the Department of Homeland Security government website. The Migrant Protection Protocols, known as MPP, are a U.S. government action whereby certain foreign individuals entering or seeking admission to the United States from Mexico illegally or without proper documentation may be returned to Mexico and wait outside of the United States for the duration of their immigration proceedings, where Mexico will provide them all appropriate humanitarian protections for the duration of their stay. And you guys may have heard about this in the news in sort of soundbite form, talking about how Mexico was going to hold some of the illegals we catch. And just to let you know, this is all legal through Section 235 of the Immigration and Nationality Act, which addresses the inspection of aliens seeking to be admitted into the United States. It's complicated and convoluted. The issue that we have, though, and we've talked to some experts, and I'm going to get Jessica Vaughn from Center for Immigration Studies back on with Doug, hopefully next week, to delve a little deeper into this, because the problem is we've enacted that migration protocol, but in the February 2019 omnibus spending bill, that was a giant, over $1 trillion spending bill. We just had another one pass a couple of weeks ago before the Christmas legislative break, and that omnibus bill did not strip out what the previous omnibus bill said. And this is what was in there that's dangerous, and it makes the Migrant Act very confusing, because this was in the omnibus bill. Section 224A prohibits the deportation of anyone who is sponsoring an unaccompanied minor illegal alien. Now, from what I saw in the law, unaccompanied minor is under 24 years old, is what I saw. Unaccompanied minor illegal alien, or who says they might sponsor an unaccompanied minor, or lives in a household with an unaccompanied minor, or a household that potentially might sponsor an unaccompanied minor. It's truly difficult to understate the betrayal behind this provision. One of the driving factors of the invasion is the misinterpretation of the unaccompanied minor law. Under current law, Central American teenagers are only treated as refugees if they are a victim of severe form of trafficking or have no relatives in the country. So Jessica Vaughn, who's a friend of the show from Center for Immigration Studies, you can see all their work at CIS.org. She said, we can call this the MS-13 Household Protection Act of 2019. We know that 80% of the unaccompanied minors sponsors are in the country illegally. The number of people this would protect would reach into the hundreds of thousands if all of the household or potential household members are counted. ICE has estimated that 30 to 40% of the MS-13 members it has arrested in the last 2 years arrived as unaccompanied minors. There's no reason to shield any of these individuals from deportation. After all, if the minor is living with the family, they should no longer be considered unaccompanied anyway. If there are illegal aliens here who do not yet have a child here to serve as a deportation shield, this certainly is an incentive for them to make the arrangements to bring one. And you will see Chris Cabrera talk about this in here, that now that they put the migrant protocols in place, there's a lot of men coming in with children, and the law goes deeper. I've read it in detail. Essentially, if someone shows up with a child or says they're bringing a child or they're meeting a child, we can't deport them. If you go to their house, say they're here illegally in the country, and they claim to have one, you can't deport them. So it's kind of this contradiction to the Migrant Protocols Act. Very confusing. So we'll get Jessica Vaughn on to explain that. Let's go back to Doug and Chris Cabrera.
Solution that we've come up with, we're working with numerous different people on this project. It's called the Terrablock System, and it's a rapid deployment wall that we're already using to protect our troops over places like Afghanistan and Iraq. Their claim is that before the election, they can finish what doesn't have a wall under $1 billion.
Shit. Wouldn't
And
it be
this
bad?
thing is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, literally freaking amazing. They try to drive a freaking truck through it at 60 miles an hour. Ain't
Yeah.
happening.
It's 50K
It's got,
rated.
yeah, it's got a PID system in it to where as soon as somebody touches it, sensors go off, cameras will let people know where they're at. You can't climb it.
That's good shit.
And it's not like building a freaking concrete wall. And it can be relocated.
Adjusted, yeah.
And adjusted.
And especially down here where you have the river, where you'd have to
Right.
you'd have to move it a little bit, and who knows, for whatever reason you might need to move it. So
Gotcha.
I think it's a good thing. I think that's a freaking awesome idea. I think that's the problem with the services. We don't take as much from the military as far as knowledge as we should.
Right.
Your prior service?
Yeah. We have that processing center, and we were going through there trying to figure out how we could speed this shit up. And we were telling them, look, you know what, if you got the Army, Navy, whoever, the quartermasters to come in, build the shower points and the laundry facility, they could come in and wash 300 or 400 loads at a time in each machine. And they say, well, we got a system already in place. So I go in there, they have a washer dryer stack unit like you would buy at Sears. They have like 30 of them, right? And I come in and I put my clothes in this one in a little yellow bag, put it in there. And then you go and you get the next one, and you get the third one, and you get the fourth one. One set of clothes for each washer and dryer. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? And they say, well, we're trying to figure it out. What are you trying to figure out? The military has it figured out. They could get this shit up in 24 hours, and we have 2 National Guard quartermaster companies within 30 miles of here. Well, we're going to see how this works. Okay, well, let me know how that turns out. But that's the problem, is we don't take, and they're willing to do it with the medical issues we have. Fort Sam Houston is right there. You graduate a class of combat medics. Hey, you know what? They don't know too much, but they can work on their vitals. Bring them down here for a month, doing vitals. It's great practice for them. Sticking IVs. That'd be awesome, and they would love it because it's a little deployment for them. But
we're going to share with you. We'll send you the video of this for you to look at. But this thing is amazing. You can't climb it. You can't penetrate it, and it's got what's called the PID system in it, where it's electronic-wise, what will let people know, let Border Patrol agents, whoever's monitoring it, know where people are at when they're up against that fence system. But the other thing that we are trying to push for is, you can't take active duty U.S. service members and put them on the border. But we can activate, the president has the authority to activate the National Guard and bring them down, Title 31 orders. And our thought process would be to help supplement you guys, help maybe as response teams to monitor this new wall system. get it in place, especially if we can do it before the election time gets here. Is that something you guys would welcome? Finish this wall, and then at the same time be able to have the National Guard. And we're obviously talking, we wouldn't be talking about, clerk people. We'd be talking about, like military police units that are trained to help augment you guys and help, besides just support roles, be able to monitor sections that you guys can't get to because you don't have the manpower.
Yeah, and we've had National Guard down here in a capacity similar to that, maybe not all the way, but a lot more than what they're doing now. Yeah. And I like working with those guys. Those guys there, and gals there, they're hardworking folks, and they're volunteers. They're coming down here, doing it for much less than what we get, and it's great to see them down here. I'd love to work with them. I'd love to have them down here. It's unfortunate that it's gotten to that point, but I think that would be something to explore if they would take the handcuffs off them and let them get out there and play. As far as the wall system's concerned, I mean, on the surface, sounds great. I think it's definitely something that should be considered and looked into. I think the only thing off the top of my head that may be concerning is being able to tunnel under it, but I'm sure there's a fix for everything. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I guess we can the concrete walls going up. They can probably tunnel
under
that. Just
I mean they can.
It's easy.
I think like in the McAllen area where we're good is we have a river system.
Right.
So I mean it's kind of hard to tunnel under a river. So I think something like that in an area like this where you just have the right combination, it should be it should be
a deterrent. It's gonna, if nothing else, it's gonna slow the process of someone coming across
and
the
I think
border
that's the key is you can't stop everything, but if you can slow it down enough to get reinforcements there to either apprehend it or eventually turn it back, then that's because the wall, it's not a one stop, this is gonna fix everything and take all our jobs. You're gonna need agents on the ground. We can't have them holding hands from San Diego to Brownsville.
Exactly.
So if it's something that can deter them, slow them down, get us in there, and make us more effective, I think it's great.
Right.
Yeah, let me just pop in here real quick for you guys that are asking some questions. Okay, first off, let me just lay this out. Before Donald Trump was president, there was 1,350 miles of barrier that had nothing. Okay, there was 650 miles of border that had some form of barrier, whether that be roadblocks, speed bumps, concertina wire, slats. We saw some of this when we were down there, built during the George W. Bush administration. And what's happened is Clinton started to build some wall, Bush built some wall, Obama even built some wall, and then these guys maintained the wall. What President Trump has really been doing is maintaining wall the same as the other presidents, except he is replacing some of the stuff that doesn't work with 18 to 30 foot slats in that area. A couple of things happened over the last week. One, the court ruled, Fifth Circuit Court, that President Trump could use $3.6 billion from the Department of Defense that he tried to move about 4 or 5 months ago, and they said he could go forward with that. Okay. Then we got information today that Chad Wolf, Trump's DHS secretary, came out and said the 550 miles that President Trump has been saying that he's going to have built by the end of 2020, and then lowered that from 550 to 500 to 450 to 400. Now Chad Wolf is saying that they aren't going to have 400 built by the end of 2020, maybe in the works. So that's where we're at. This is coming from the Trump administration. These are Customs and Border Patrol numbers. Okay, as Doug put out on Facebook today, they were celebrating that they had constructed 100 miles. So if you take 100 miles, and again, this is in the 650 miles that had something, so this is the same thing essentially that President Bush, President Obama, President Clinton were doing, 100 miles over 3 years. Okay, we were promised 2,000 miles across the whole border, which is 2,000 miles. So, based on what Doug tweeted, which the math is true, at this pace, it would take us 57 years to build 2,000 miles. Now, what we're proposing, again, this is a three-part solution. We've talked about it a million times. I know you guys are asking, can people dig under it, tunnel under it, fly over it, get dropped by a drone, poke holes in it? Nothing is 100%. Okay, even if we had the 35-foot tall concrete wall, people ask, can you drive a truck with explosives through Terrablock? You could drive a truck with explosives through a concrete wall. We're not getting the concrete wall. We're just getting steel slats, and we've seen videos of people cutting through it, climbing it, and everything else. So what we're proposing is 3 parts. Terrablock, which some of the stuff you've seen in the video, and there's various forms of Terrablock, different systems they have, and they would have to modify some things for the border. Number 1, you get around all the EPA regulations because it is surface mounted. Yes, do you have to worry about people digging under it? Yeah, but these tunnels that you've heard about are like El Chapo, multi-billion-dollar tunnels. You know, to just take a shovel and start digging under it is a little difficult. So what we're saying is that you put Terrablock in place in the 1,350 miles. You then man those 1,350 miles with National Guard or military under the Insurrection Act, and you also have the perimeter intrusion detection technology, which is the fiber optic cable that runs through the wall system. Therefore, if people are trying to climb it or tunnel under it, it's going to set off a sensor. If you have National Guard or military or Border Patrol stationed every half mile across the border, they're going to be able to respond before people get there. Nothing is 100%, but if it's 90% effective, 80% effective, 70% effective, it's more than we have now. So what we're saying is plug the hole, then build the wall. We'll continue to fight to then replace Terrablock with actual slats or concrete wall, but we need to plug the hole now. We're losing our country. Demographic warfare is destroying us. You see that taking shape in Virginia is the latest example. The New York Times recently bragged that the left flipped Virginia from red to blue over the last 20 years using demographic warfare. They moved foreign-born into that state. Foreign-born votes 73% Democrat, according to the Pew Research Center. So Virginia has the highest foreign-born population growth rate right now. Plus, Northern Virginia has federal government workers, contractors that trend Democrat like so heavily. So that's what we're seeing happen in Virginia. That's happening in Texas. It's happening in Florida. If we do not plug this hole on the border, if we do not put Terrablock down there, put the perimeter intrusion detection technology down there, and put the National Guard into our military down there with arrest powers, forget it. I mean, we lost this country. So that's what it is. And for people who've asked, Terrablock, the system that you were looking at, stands 13.5 feet tall. Then there's a 3.5 foot barbed wire, razor wire coil on the top. So it's at 17 feet. You know, for a prefab modular solution, that's pretty damn good. And again, it's surface mounted, so we can get around the EPA regulations, be able to get that put in right away, because you don't have to get permits to dig underground and everything else. Then we can worry about all the other problems. But we need to plug the hole now. And we should be putting pressure on and holding President Trump's feet to the fire and Jared Kushner as his representative to get this done right away. Let's get back to the interview.
And, you know, one of the things that upset a lot of friends that I know and a lot of our viewers was when you have certain members of Congress that will come down and go back and spin a false narrative and say that you have people drinking out of toilets and that they felt threatened while they were in the facility. Protection, government-wise, local sheriff's departments, city police, so forth, and even border agents. This was all
and apprehend people or people bringing stuff into the country illegally, but it has switched a lot to humanitarian mission. And our agents along the southwestern border have saved more lives than any 5 agencies combined. I have one of my classmates, a fellow EMT down there that I work with. I think he's delivered 3 babies in the last year or two. So we're out there. We do that job. I know most agents carry toys in their bag at work. So when we come upon a kid that's by themselves, we can, at least give them some type of comfort. What one human will do to another and the perils they face along the way. And the only way to stop that is to turn off that beacon that says, come here at any and all costs. And if it's best for them to not even try and make it, when you have a 10, 11, 12-year-old girl on birth control because their parents know that's part of the journey, that's not worth the risk taken.
Right, exactly. What are y'all seeing in the way of people from other countries that can't get into America any other way, because if they flew into an airport, they'd be flagged and caught and sent back, but yet they'd fly into Mexico or anywhere in Central and South America and they'd come up with a group of people?
Oh, we see that all the time. I mean, the big ones we see is Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, obviously Mexico. But we see a lot from China, a lot from India. Uzbekistan has been popping up here quite a bit. We see a lot from pretty much every country you can think of. I mean, I think not too far from here, they got some Russian nationals. We've got Czechoslovakians, Hungarians. I mean, it's not just Latin American countries, people that are coming through. It's from everywhere. And I mean, let's be honest, it's easier to come in illegally than it is legally.
Right.
You know, and people know that, and they're going to take advantage of the system. As with anything, with a tax loophole, people find it, they exploit it, but they're real quick to close it. With immigration, they find it, it's exploited, and we just announce it and continue to let it happen at the peril of the U.S. taxpayer.
Right.
Everything is run through that cartel.
Do you see the cartel working with Muslims, working with Middle Easterns, training them? I've heard through the grapevine.
I don't know what goes on over there, but I don't doubt it, because the governing system over there is the almighty dollar.
Yeah.
And whoever's paying, they don't have any allegiance to us.
I hear what they do is they give them a crash course in Spanish. Okay. 20 foot away, a Middle Eastern could pass for, a Central American. And they teach them just enough Spanish, a week's worth of Spanish. They come over with money. So they teach them a week's worth of Spanish, and then they inject them into a group that's going over.
Yeah, and they can get by.
And they can get by with it. They speak just barely enough Spanish to act stupid, and then they get in with the group, and they write country of origin, they write Honduras and Nicaragua.
And they can even go a little farther and just teach them a little Portuguese and say they're Brazilian, because I wouldn't be able to bring them in Spanish.
Right.
But with the Portuguese, I mean, how the hell do I know if you speak
Unless
Portuguese
you have
or not? Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's these guys are very sophisticated, and unlike us, they don't have a budget.
Right.
They
have big budget.
No, they don't have budget constraints like we do.
Right.
They're able to work, do what they got to do. They have people on our side, the people on their side. It's a very involved process, and they're very good at what they do. I mean, we know a lot of people from the Middle East are coming over, because we find it in the pocket trash we find on the landings and stuff. We'll see it in the clothing tags. If it's written in obviously a different language. I mean, anything can say made in China,
Arabic,
but if it's written in Arabic, obviously,
Not a lot of stuff says made in Saudi
Yeah, and
or
especially if it's written in Arabic or whatever, or the passports or discarded receipts, you can tell a lot from the
prayer mats, Korans.
We have seen some prayer mats. I don't think we've seen any Korans, but we haven't seen a lot of it. But we have seen it,
Right.
And I think that's the thing is, I had a reporter ask me one time. She said, "Well, it's proven that only in the past 4 years we've only apprehended 12 known terrorists coming in the country." And I told her, I said, "Well, I mean, how many do you want? I mean, isn't one just too many? One can give you a really bad day.
Yeah.
I mean, 12 is a nightmare. So I mean."
Right. Now, how much of the border is your sector covered?
Our sector is around about 300, I believe, 300 miles more or less. And
Okay.
I work out of the McAllen Station, which is the busiest station in the nation, and we have 53 miles. It's also, I think, the largest station. We're almost 800 agents out there.
And what are you seeing in numbers, approximately?
2 months ago at this time, we were seeing 1,500 to 2,000 a day. Now we're down to about, 300, 400. So
Okay.
it's slowed down quite a bit. It's still going, which it's good. It's given our guys a break, a nice little break from the last 4 or 5 years. But there still is work. There's a lot of work out there, a lot of drugs coming across, a lot of people coming across. And now that these loopholes are closing, a lot of people are becoming more violent towards our agents, because now they have something to lose.
Right.
So if we try and apprehend them, they're going to fight. And we're starting to see a lot more assaults on our agents.
Now, what do you think the percentage is of actual woman and child that's actually their child that doesn't have a criminal record and is just wanting to come to America for a better life and chose to come through the desert or across the Rio Grande?
You know, I would say 2 years ago, that was a big number. That was a huge number, probably maybe 60%. And then we started, they made camp space available, detention space available for mothers with children. So then the big number now was men with children, because there's no place to house men with children. So now that's what we're seeing.
Wow. Out of your total numbers, Border Patrol-wise, obviously when you have to now do not only the apprehending, the detention, help babysitting, basically, is what we do. How is that affecting the percentage of actual agents on the border? I mean, are we way behind the power curve on how many agents need to be hired to pick up the difference in what we're removing? I mean, I know when I was in law enforcement, you know, I make an arrest and then you're off the street for the next 4 hours because you got to go through the whole process, and God forbid if the person has to go to the hospital, you know, that's one less person on the street, officer-wise. I would imagine that's the same thing here, where, you know, you literally need, what, several more thousand agents?
Yeah, you know, right now with that migrant protection program, which has only been a month or so, it's allowed a lot of our agents to get back out in the field. So had we had this conversation 2 months ago, I would have told you, we're probably lacking, you know, just at my, you know, any state probably double the workforce, just because the majority of our workforce was inside. Now with this program that's picked up, a lot of the apprehensions have slowed. Not as many people are crossing, so our agents are back out there. However, I think we all know that we're just one bad news day or one low court decision away from it all just changing. And because there is no permanent fix yet. Everything is still temporary. Yeah. So unless we get that fixed, we're going to be in some serious trouble, because you know, the way this court system is put an injunction on, everything comes to a halt, goes back to the old way, and we're right back where we started. And that's the scary part.
When I was down here in April of this year, I talked to a border agent, deputy sheriff, a Brownsville police officer, and a Texas Highway Patrol person. And I asked them if I could relay to the American people one thing about what's happening down here, what would that be? And this was all at separate times and separate interviews. And they all said the same thing. And I want to give you the opportunity to answer that same question. And what they said was, we wanted to know why the members of Congress will come down here, but they stop at the detention center with their suit and ties, and they don't go out on the actual missions with the men and women on the border to see firsthand what they're encountering. And that to me was a major, you know, wow, you're right. We've got two separate areas here, and this one down here requires you to get dirty, but they don't want to do that. How often do you actually have a member of Congress that's willing to put on a pair of jeans and a shirt and go out and ride along with you guys?
Well, and it's very rare. You know, usually when they come out, if they do go out to the field, they'll it'll be in a helicopter or on a boat. But I can tell you from firsthand experience, Senator Ron Johnson and Representative Willie Gohmert, those guys have actually been out here in the field, walking the trails with me. I've taken them down there. Poor Mr. Gohmert, they started firing off some rounds when we were out there. But yeah, with Mr. Ron Johnson, he went out there and he looked around and he saw firsthand. Unfortunately, that doesn't happen a lot. My biggest concern, what I tell people that they should realize is this problem doesn't necessarily affect us. I mean, as Border Patrol, yes, but as the community, it doesn't affect us, because 95% of the people aren't staying here. The drugs they're bringing through, they're not staying here. We don't have an opioid problem in the Rio Grande Valley. They do in Ohio. Where do you think it comes from? It comes through here. Right. With a huge Honduran population or Mara Salvatrucha problem, we don't have that in the Rio Grande Valley. But you have it in Virginia, Maryland, D.C., you have it in Atlanta, but we don't have it here. but where do you think they came through? So we're like a parade. The community is like a parade route, and we're watching it just go right through, and it's going to the rest of America where you guys live, not where we live. So people think, well, that's down there. That's not a problem because it's we got a big buffer. Well, not necessarily. It's coming to an area near you.
Yeah, but, you know, I recently had the opportunity, and I know you have as well, to talk with angel families, and I have met some very wonderful people that my heart goes out for them. I can't even imagine what it's like to lose a child, but then to lose a child from somebody that you find out has been not only here illegally, but deported numerous times. I'm sure in its own way that affects our men and women in law enforcement, knowing that you're having to fight a justice system that slaps a lot of these guys on the wrist and sends them right back out the door.
Well, and we have a co-worker that was murdered by two illegals. Marine Corps veteran. He was fishing with his mom, his dad, his wife, and his children, and one of the children's friend. And some guys came up to rob him and pulled a gun and shot him, shot his father. His father survived. The mother grabbed an AR that was in the bed of the truck and disabled the vehicle, which allowed the guys to be caught. One's on death row and one's life in prison without the possibility of parole. But both of those guys have been deported multiple times.
Wow.
And it's one of our, I mean, any lost child, no matter if your child's 57 or 7, is terrible. No parent should have to bury their child. And in this case, it was one of our own, and it happened in front of his family, and that's just terrible. And keep in contact with the family, they're great people. But it's terrible, and so it can reach anybody. It can reach a police officer. It can be anything, drunk driver or a violent intentional act. You can't say that everybody that comes into criminal, we all know that, but we have enough criminals that are born here and homegrown. We don't need to import anymore.
Right.
So that's the thing is, not everybody that's coming over is bad, but everybody that's coming over should be checked, just like you check them at your house.
Let's get back to the original question where the college, where I was looking at the topographical map, and there's a big gap. I'm going like on the map. Why is there a big gap? The college is right there, so we went down and investigated. We drove right down to the Rio Grande from the college, from the main road, right down past the college maintenance building and the ROTC building of UT, and right to the Rio Grande, a nice road, gravel road, mowed fields, right to the Rio Grande. There's no fence, there's no border, there's no gates on the. Why is that?
In that area and some other areas close by, even some areas on this side of town, we've had a lot of pushback from the local, whether it be the landowner or the university, not wanting us to infringe on their property or infringe on their rights. So everything gets tied up in a court case, and then ultimately gets bypassed. And so with that one, I know in that area they had a lot of problems with the university about putting it in certain areas.
So basically the university tells you to pack sand about building any kind of wall. They said nothing?
Within reason. If the government wants it, ultimately they're going to get it. But as we see now with what's going on just with the news the last couple of days, they're going to tie it up in some type of legal process, and it's going to take a little longer to get out there.
But the border's been there for 200 years.
Yeah.
Okay, this was nothing new. There's nothing there. There's no fence. There's no signs. There's no even signs from the Rio Grande. You're now entering the United States. The college won't even let you put up perimeter signs because I know on the fence they have property in the United States. You're entering the United States, and what are the blurb that they have on the. I don't see any of that.
Yeah.
What looks like to be the college area, maybe I want to say maybe 2-click area, that there's no signs, no fence, no anything, and someone could jump across the Rio Grande dressed like a college kid, walk onto the campus, and no one would know except for their shoes are wet.
Oh, and on top of that, it's probably done 10, 15, 20 times a day that happens. The other thing is I've seen things down here, you can put a sign up there, but if it's not welded in there, it's gone within the hour. You know, especially with college kids. College kids don't have any. But yeah.
Well, thankfully, nobody's been injured, college student-wise, right?
Yeah.
Remind me about incident that happened some time ago about the shots being fired from Mexico and landing into the university. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there's a golf course over in that area, and there was a cartel military skirmish in Mexico, and there was some shots fired, and some were coming onto our side and hitting into the college campus area, and they had to lock down the school. It was some years back, but not too distant.
Right, but it's not uncommon even now, especially right now. Do you hear shots?
Oh yeah,
all the time. I mean,
working on the river, you'll hear them a couple times a week. You're out there, and at first you're kind of like, oh crap, let's get the hell out of here. And then after a while, you just kind of look around like, I don't see any muzzle flashes. I'll just kind of continue to eat my lunch. So you kind of get numb to it, but you
no
see
whizzes.
Yeah, you get kind of lulled to sleep by it, but it happens quite a bit. It's very common, especially in this area. You have the Gulf Cartel, you have the Zetas trying to test them from time to time, and then the cartel's always splitting with each other, and then the military. So there's constant fights on the Mexican side, and unfortunately, it's gotten all too common.
I agree. One last thing I want to ask. Back during the previous administration, we had, which was all over the news, the gun running that was taking place, Fast and Furious, where a border agent lost his life due to one of those weapons. Have y'all apprehended any of these weapons since? I mean, have you seen those from that list coming back and getting being able to apprehend it?
We haven't seen them through here. I know another guy that he works for CBP. His brother was working for CBP in Mexico, and he was killed also with that. We had Mr. Zapata, and then we had Brian Terry. So they were real close in time frame. Right. And so it has reached the federal side on that too, unfortunately. And I wish they would do something about that and bring those people to not just the people that did it.
Right.
Because who knows if they'll ever be able to find that, but the people here that we know that allowed them to do it.
Right.
But yeah, we haven't seen. I don't know if we've apprehended any of those weapons or not. But if you look at the Mexican media, you saw what happened with El Chapo's son the other day, right. 50 cals. I mean, all our weapons are over there anyway, whether it's U.S. Army issued or what. But they're managing to find their way into Mexico, and that's just a failed state over there. And the sad thing, the scary thing is it's less than 10 miles from us.
Right. Yeah. It's right around right across the border.
Yeah.
Is there any one particular thing that you would like the audience to know about the current state of affairs down here, and any future plans that you would like to see? If you could talk to the president about, this is what we need right now, what would that be?
I think, and it may sound cold and heartless, but I think the only answer right now is mandatory detention, mandatory removal, in order to turn off that beacon of light that will leave a light on you, on for you, so you can come on over. Hey, we need to stop that and secure our border. Once we get that secure, we can worry about fixing what's broken, the immigration reform or whatever you want to call it. Get that done after it's secured, and then from there we move forward. But you have to do one before you do the other. Once that gets done, we'll take it from there.
And one last thing I wanted to mention, you brought up earlier about the lives saved. Mm-hmm. What's that number like right now?
Oof, I'd have to get back to you on that number, okay. But it is an astounding number. Our agents, whether it's up in the ranch lands patrolling, finding folks, people that, we have a huge EMT program just in this area. Okay, because even though we have special operations EMTs, they're not on the front like our agents are. So a lot of our agents do double duty as an agent and an EMT. Guys that have saved children with snake bites, pregnancies, dehydration, rhabdo, heat stroke. Even down here, as hot as it gets, hypothermia. When it does get cold, and our agents are right there in the front. Even not just with the people we encounter, but members of the community. Where there's so many of us down here, first on scene at a motor vehicle accident, and that, you know, just those few minutes can sometimes make the difference between life and death.
Right, right.
And that's what we're out here doing every day. We have the law enforcement side of it, but at the same time, we're baked in a humanitarian role, and we embrace it.
I know down in Arizona we have the Arizona Border Recon guys led by Tim Foley, and throughout different locations of the border you've had you know, the Minutemen, the 3%ers, and so forth. In general, has that been a good assistance for you guys?
Well, up here, well, in this area, a little farther north, we have Dr. Vickers, and they have the Texas Border Volunteers, and they're nothing but a class act. I mean, those guys are awesome. They sit back and they watch the area. Real good relationship with the Border Patrol. They don't jump out, get in front, or try and take anything into their own hands. Purely an observation role, and you know, obviously they can go into a self-defense mode also. But they're just nothing but class act men and women that do that. And I can't speak more highly of those folks, because I know some of those groups get bad names, and once one group gets a bad name, they all get a bad name. Exactly. But if this was the only group you saw, you would think that everybody was just, you know, church mice, because those folks are just class act in my book.
Very cool, very cool. Well, thank you. Gotcha. Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate it, brother. Thank you for your service in the military as well as in law enforcement. Folks, look, it's pretty simple. We have a problem here. It's not going away. If anything, it's getting worse. The mainstream media is no longer focusing on it. Maybe, possibly, sharing this video will get the mainstream media to continue to look at what's happening down here and do the right thing by you, the American people. Because if we don't fix it, it will only get worse. It will fester. It's like a fungus that you just gets out of control. And we've had enough people lose their lives, be it regular Americans or in law enforcement, by those that shouldn't have been here in the first place. So, as always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving the United States military, our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders, their families serve too. Our Blue and Gold Star families, those families that have lost their lives or have loved ones that have lost their lives to illegal immigration. Say a prayer for our president and our country. God bless you all. I'm Douglas Ducote, and I'll talk to you soon.
You know, I'm watching the chat as this was playing, and I hope you guys learned a lot from this. There was a lot to learn from this, and again, this is the Vice President of the Border Patrol Council, the largest Border Patrol union. We've introduced you to a number of people that we met at the border on our last trip. Again, we're setting up our next trip, which is going to take place after after Douglas covers the Virginia Lobby Day and rally to protect the Second Amendment there in Virginia on January 20th. Then we'll be releasing a 90-minute documentary on all the border stuff we've done so far, and begin raising money to go back down there. We're going to do some ride-alongs with Border Patrol, hopefully. We're trying to set that up and get permission now so that we can go up in helicopters and out on boats on the Rio Grande and out in vehicles, and also walk some of the paths with them so that you guys can get an inside look at what these guys have to deal with day to day. I understand in the chat, I see people getting frustrated. I see people really, screaming about, whiteness and this thing and that thing. And I think what's happening, and this is a failure of our federal government, is that people are getting upset. We're seeing inaction on a lot of issues in which, even this last election, we voted for. I think instead of fighting with each other, which social media and the internet really makes it easy for us to do. Think about everything that you come in contact with on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube comments is frankly poison. We are trying to educate the audience, whether it be Douglas with everything he does, me when I fill in, the content that we create together. We are trying to educate you on a number of issues and also provide real solutions instead of just complaining. And I think if you take your anger and you drive your anger to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, the White House, with the solution that we're presenting, and others like some of the Angel families and others in the immigration battle are talking about. The Terrablock modular solution as a border barrier, the PID perimeter intrusion detection, smart technology so that we know if people are trying to tunnel under or climb over, and then the deployment of National Guard and our military under the Insurrection Act with full arrest powers so that they can man the new Terrablock to be going down. None of the other platforms are going down. The main platform we